Welcome, beautiful souls, to Her True Stories, the channel where we dive deep into the raw, powerful stories of women who defied the odds, found their strength, and delivered a dose of unforgettable justice. Today, we're talking about a betrayal so profound, it struck at the very core of trust and family. Imagine standing proudly at your daughter's birthday party, bringing a gift chosen with love and meaning, only for her to throw it back at you in disgust while calling you a disgrace in front of everyone. But what if that moment of humiliation contained a secret that would change everything? What if inside that rejected gift was something that would haunt her forever? Don't just listen and leave. Hit subscribe so you'll never miss another story that speaks to your soul. Get ready, because this is a journey of triumph you won't want to miss. My name is Evelyn Moore, and at 58 years old, I thought I understood the depths of human ingratitude. I was wrong. The Williams family estate in Westchester gleamed under the late afternoon sun, its manicured gardens and marble fountains a testament to old money and older pride. My daughter Maya's birthday party was in full swing, with 50 of the county's most influential people mingling on the terrace, champagne glasses catching the golden light. I stood slightly apart from the crowd, watching Maya hold court near the elaborate gift table. At 28, she was undeniably beautiful, tall and elegant like her late father, with a kind of polished confidence that comes from never having wanted for anything. Her designer dress probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, a gift from her mother-in-law, Mrs. Williams, who had made it clear from the beginning that she considered herself Maya's true family now. The gifts were impressive, as expected. Cartier jewelry, designer handbags, artwork from established galleries. Each present was unwrapped with theatrical gasps of delight, photographed extensively for social media, and praised effusively before being set aside for the next offering. I clutched my own gift a little tighter, a leather-bound first edition of Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke, beautifully restored and carefully chosen. It wasn't flashy or expensive-looking, but it had meaning. Rilke had been Maya's favorite poet in college, before she'd married Prince Will Williams, and her tastes had shifted to more material concerns. Evelyn, dear, Mrs. Williams appeared beside me like a perfectly coiffed specter, her smile as sharp as her diamond earrings. How lovely that you could make it. I do hope traffic wasn't too terrible from your little apartment. The condescension was delivered with such practiced sweetness that anyone overhearing would think she was being kind. But I had learned to read Mrs. Williams's particular brand of cruelty over the past 3 years. Every word was calculated to remind me of my diminished circumstances, of how I had downsized after my husband's death, while she had only grown more prosperous. Not at all, Catherine, I replied evenly. It's always a pleasure to celebrate Maya's birthday. Mrs. Williams's eyes flicked to the book in my hands, and her smile widened predatorily. Oh, how thoughtful. I'm sure Maya will appreciate the sentiment. She paused, letting the word sentiment hang in the air like something slightly distasteful. You know, Evelyn, it's so important for gifts to be practical these days. That's why I chose something Maya could actually use. She gestured toward the gift table where an ornate Tiffany box sat prominently in the center, twice the size of anyone else's offering. A diamond necklace, she continued proudly. 18 carats, with matching earrings. The kind of jewelry befitting a Williams woman. The implication was clear. I was not a Williams woman, and my gift was not befitting anything. How generous, I murmured, though my heart was beating faster. Mrs. Williams had no idea what she was really comparing her necklace to. None of them did. The gift-opening ceremony began with great fanfare. Maya positioned herself in the center of the terrace, surrounded by friends and family, while Prince Will stood behind her with his phone ready to capture every moment for posterity. One by one, Maya opened her presents with practiced enthusiasm. The Hermes bag from her college sorority sisters. the vintage wine collection from Prince Will's business partners, the spa weekend package from her yoga instructor. Each gift was received with squeals of delight and effusive thanks. Finally, Mrs. Williams stepped forward with her elaborate box. "This is from the Williams family," she announced loudly, ensuring everyone could hear. "A little something to commemorate another year of having our darling Maya as part of our family." Maya opened the box with trembling hands, and even I had to admit the necklace was stunning. The diamonds caught the light like captured starfire, each stone perfectly cut and set in platinum that seemed to glow with its own inner radiance. "Oh my God," Maya breathed, her voice carrying across the terrace. "Catherine, this is incredible. I can't believe how generous you are, how thoughtful, how perfect." She stood up to embrace her mother-in-law, and the crowd erupted in appreciative murmurs. Camera phones flashed as Maya held the necklace up to the light, and Mrs. Williams basked in the attention like a queen receiving tribute. "Let me put it on you," Mrs. Williams said, taking the necklace and fastening it around Maya's neck. "There. Now you look like the princess you were always meant to be." The crowd applauded, and Maya spun around to show off the necklace from every angle. She looked radiant, transformed, as if the diamonds had somehow elevated her to a higher plane of existence. That's when she noticed me still standing at the edge of the group, my modest gift still in my hands. "Mom," she called out, her voice carrying a note I didn't like. "Don't you have something for me too?" Every eye turned to me. I felt the weight of their attention, the barely concealed curiosity about what the mother who lived in a little apartment could possibly have brought to compete with diamonds. I walked forward, my spine straight and my head high. "Of course, sweetheart. Happy birthday." I extended the book toward her, the leather binding warm and smooth in my hands. "It's Rilke," I said quietly. "A first edition. I remembered how much you loved his poetry in college." Maya took the book, and I watched her expression change as she felt its weight, saw its simple elegance. Around us, the crowd had grown quiet, waiting to see how she would react to such an obviously modest gift in the wake of her mother-in-law's extravagance. She opened the cover, glanced at the title page, then looked up at me. The expression on her face made my heart sink. "Seriously?" she said, her voice rising slightly. "A book? You brought me a used book?" "It's a first edition," I repeated gently. "It's quite valuable, and I thought—" "You thought what?" Maya's voice had gone cold, cutting through the evening air like a blade. "That I wanted some dusty old book when everyone else brought real gifts?" The crowd around us had gone completely silent now. I could feel their eyes on us, could sense the anticipation of a scene. "Maya," I said quietly, "perhaps we could discuss this privately." "No," she snapped, her eyes blazing with an anger that seemed disproportionate to the situation. "I'm tired of being embarrassed by you, Mom. Look around." She gestured at the other gifts, the elegant crowd, the opulent setting. "This is my life now. This is who I am. And you show up with some secondhand book like we're at a garage sale?" The hurt in my chest was physical, sharp, and immediate. But it was the murmur of shocked approval from some members of the crowd that really stung. They were enjoying this, I realized. They wanted to see the downtrodden mother put in her place. "Honey," I tried one more time. "If you just—" Maya threw the book back at me with such force that it hit my chest and knocked the breath from my lungs. The sound of the impact was audible across the terrace. "You are such a disgrace," she spat, her voice dripping with contempt. "She's the real one." She gestured toward Mrs. Williams, who was watching with barely concealed satisfaction. "She knows how to treat family. She knows what real love looks like. What is this, some cheap thrift store find? You always embarrass me." The book fell to the ground at my feet, its pages splaying open against the stone terrace. Around us, the crowd was completely still, mesmerized by the spectacle of a daughter publicly destroying her mother. Principal stepped forward and put his arm around Maya's shoulders, his smile smug and satisfied. "Babe, don't let her upset you on your special day," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Some people just don't understand what quality means." I bent down slowly and picked up the book, brushing off the dust and carefully closing it. My hands were steady, though my heart was breaking. I looked up at Maya, at her face flushed with anger and embarrassment, at the crowd watching us like vultures circling roadkill. "I understand," I said quietly, my voice carrying clearly in the silence. "I understand perfectly." I turned and walked away from the party, the book clutched against my chest. Behind me, I heard Maya's voice, shakier now, trying to restart the celebration. "Well, that was awkward. Sorry, everyone. Let's get back to the party." But I didn't look back. I walked to my car with my head held high, ignoring the whispers and stares that followed me. I got behind the wheel, set the book carefully on the passenger seat, and drove away from the Williams estate for what I knew would be the last time. As I drove through the darkening evening, one thought echoed in my mind. What Maya didn't know was that inside that book was a check for $10 million. And by the time she realized what she had thrown away, it would be far, far too late. I drove directly to my attorney's office, even though it was well past business hours. Victoria Chun had been my lawyer for 15 years, and more importantly, she had been my friend for 20. She was the only person I trusted completely in matters of such magnitude. Victoria's office building was nearly empty, but I knew she would still be there. She worked late most evenings, partly out of dedication to her clients and partly, I suspected, to avoid going home to her own complicated family dynamics. I found her exactly where I expected, behind her mahogany desk, surrounded by legal briefs and case files, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed contracts by the light of her desk lamp. "Evelyn." She looked up in surprise as I knocked on her open door. "What are you doing here? How was Maya's party?" I stepped into her office and closed the door behind me. "I need to make some changes to my will, Victoria. Tonight." She could see from my expression that something significant had happened. Victoria had known me long enough to recognize when I was operating from a place of absolute certainty rather than emotional reaction. "Sit down," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "Tell me what happened." I told her everything. The party, the gifts, Mrs. Williams's condescension, and most importantly, Maya's public rejection and humiliation. I spoke calmly and factually, but Victoria could see the hurt beneath my composure. "Oh, Evelyn," she breathed when I finished. "I'm so sorry. That must have been devastating." "It was illuminating," I corrected her, "and it clarified something I've been struggling with for months." I reached into my purse and pulled out the book, opening it carefully to reveal what I had hidden inside. The check was nestled between pages 47 and 48, exactly where I had placed it 3 days earlier. $10 million, made out to Maya Williams-Moore, signed and dated. Victoria's eyes widened as she saw the amount. "Evelyn, you were going to give her $10 million? For her birthday?" "I was going to give her financial independence," I explained. "Freedom from having to depend on the Williams family money. I thought if she had her own fortune, she might remember who she used to be before she married into all this superficiality." Victoria studied the check, then looked back at me, but she rejected it. "She threw it back at you without even looking inside the book." "Exactly. And in doing so, she made her choice clear. She chose material ostentation over meaningful connection. She chose her mother-in-law's conditional love over her own mother's unconditional support. She chose cruelty over kindness." I leaned forward in my chair. "I want you to void this check, Victoria. Tonight. And I want you to redirect those funds permanently, irrevocably, to the scholarship foundation I've been considering. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. Evelyn, are you sure about this? This is $10 million we're talking about. Once I redirect these funds to the foundation, there's no getting them back. Maya will never have access to this money. I'm absolutely certain, I replied without hesitation. Maya made it clear tonight that my gifts, and by extension my love, are worthless to her. She wants flash and glamour and expensive baubles. She doesn't want wisdom, or poetry, or a meaningful gesture. And she certainly doesn't want anything from me. Victoria nodded slowly. All right. I'll draft the papers tonight. The Scholarship Foundation for Underprivileged Students Pursuing Careers in Education and Social Work. Yes. The Evelyn and James Moore Foundation. I smiled slightly at the mention of my late husband's name. James always believed that education was the greatest gift you could give someone. He would approve of this use of our money. Victoria began pulling up documents on her computer. I'll need about an hour to prepare everything properly. The funds will be transferred into an irrevocable trust that will fund scholarships in perpetuity. Are you planning to serve on the board? Of course. This foundation will be my legacy now, instead of... I gestured vaguely toward the book with its hidden, rejected gift. Instead of enabling someone who has made it clear she doesn't value what I have to offer. As Victoria worked, I sat in the comfortable silence of her office and reflected on the evening's events. I wasn't acting out of anger or spite. I was acting out of clarity. Maya had shown me exactly who she was and what she valued. I was simply choosing to invest my resources accordingly. Evelyn, Victoria said after some time, I have to ask, what are you planning to do about Maya? Are you going to tell her about the check? I considered the question carefully. Not immediately. I think Maya needs to experience the natural consequences of her choice first. She needs to understand that actions have repercussions, that cruelty carries a cost. And when she does find out, when she finds out, it will be too late. The money will be gone, permanently committed to helping people who value education and opportunity. People who understand the difference between price and value. Victoria finished the paperwork and printed out the documents for my signature. As I signed my name to each page, I felt a profound sense of peace settling over me. This money would change hundreds of lives over the coming decades. It would fund dreams and open doors and create opportunities for young people who would never take such gifts for granted. It was a far better use of $10 million than giving it to someone who would throw it away as carelessly as she had thrown away the book that contained it. It's done, Victoria said, sealing the documents in her office safe. The funds will be transferred first thing Monday morning. The Evelyn and James Moore Foundation will be officially established by the end of the week. I stood up and picked up the book, closing it carefully around the now worthless check. Thank you, Victoria, for everything. Are you okay, Evelyn? I mean, really okay? I paused at her office door and considered the question honestly. I'm better than okay, I realized. I'm free. For the first time in years, I'm completely free to live according to my own values instead of trying to please someone who will never be pleased. As I drove home through the quiet streets, I felt lighter than I had in months. The weight of trying to maintain a relationship with someone who clearly despised me had been lifted from my shoulders. Maya had chosen her path tonight, and now I was free to choose mine. The book sat on my passenger seat, innocent-looking and deceptively simple. Inside it was a check that would never be cashed, a gift that would never be accepted, a gesture of love that had been not just rejected, but actively despised. But that was Maya's loss, not mine. And by the time she realized the magnitude of what she had thrown away, it would be far, far too late to matter. The social circles of Westchester County operate on a complex system of whispered conversations, carefully timed revelations, and strategic information sharing. I had lived in this world long enough to understand its rhythms and rules. By Monday morning, 3 days after Maya's party, I began my quiet campaign. It started with my book club meeting at the Westchester Country Club. 8 women, all between 50 and 70, all influential in their own spheres, all masters of the art of genteel gossip. I had been a member of this group for 12 years, and these women respected me as someone who rarely spoke ill of others, which made my words carry additional weight when I chose to share something troubling. "How was Maya's birthday party, Evelyn?" asked Margaret Sinclair, the group's unofficial leader and the wife of a federal judge. "I heard Catherine Williams went all out." "It was quite an evening," I replied carefully, settling into my usual chair with my tea. "The setting was beautiful, and the gifts were certainly elaborate. Catherine does love her grand gestures," added Susan Parker, whose husband owned the largest real estate development company in the county. I imagine Maya was thrilled. "Maya was very appreciative of her mother-in-law's necklace," I said with perfect honesty. "The diamonds were quite stunning." "And what did you give her?" This came from Patricia Holmes, a woman known for her direct questions and limited patience for social pretense. I paused, as if considering how much to share. "I brought her a first-edition Rilke, Letters to a Young Poet. She used to love poetry in college before." I let my voice trail off meaningfully. "Before she married into money," Patricia finished bluntly. "And how did she react to literature instead of jewelry?" I sighed, allowing just the right amount of hurt to show in my expression. "I'm afraid Maya has changed quite a bit since her marriage. She found my gift inadequate." She made that quite clear in front of everyone. The women exchanged glances. They all knew Maya had watched her transformation from an idealistic college graduate to a society wife obsessed with status and material possessions. "Oh, Evelyn," Margaret said with genuine sympathy. "How awful for you. What exactly did she say?" "I'd rather not repeat her exact words," I replied with dignity. "But she threw the book back at me and called me a disgrace. She said her mother-in-law was the real one because she understood what real love looked like." The silence that followed was loaded with shock and disapproval. These women were all mothers themselves, and they understood the profound cruelty of a child publicly rejecting a parent's gift. "In front of everyone?" Susan asked, her voice rising slightly. 50 guests," I confirmed quietly, "including her husband's business associates and most of their social circle." "That's appalling," Patricia declared. "Absolutely appalling. I don't care how much money the Williams family has. There's no excuse for that kind of behavior." "Maya clearly doesn't appreciate the value of thoughtful gifts," added Margaret. "A first edition Rilke. That's a beautiful, meaningful present. The kind of thing that shows real consideration for the recipient's interests and personality." "I'm afraid Maya's interests have shifted," I said sadly. "She seems to value things that sparkle more than things that inspire thought or reflection." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with each woman contributing her own observations about Maya's transformation and expressing sympathy for my situation. By the time we parted ways, I knew the story would be shared with at least a dozen other influential women before sunset. The next day, I had lunch with Rebecca Morrison, the director of the county's most prestigious charity foundation. Rebecca had known Maya since childhood and had watched her evolution with growing concern. "I heard about the birthday party incident," Rebecca said without preamble as soon as we were seated at the country club dining room. "Margaret Sinclair mentioned it at the hospital board meeting this morning." "News travels fast," I observed mildly. "Evelyn, I have to say I'm shocked. I know Maya has changed since her marriage, but to publicly humiliate her own mother over a thoughtful gift? That's beyond the pale." Rebecca leaned forward across the table. "What kind of book was it?" Margaret said it was a first edition of something. "Rilke, Letters to a Young Poet. A beautiful edition, perfectly restored. I had it specially bound in leather." I paused, then added quietly, I chose it because Maya used to quote Rilke all the time in college. She had his poems memorized. I thought it might remind her of who she used to be. And she threw it back at you? She said I was a disgrace. That Mrs. Williams was the real one because she knew what real love looked like. I met Rebecca's eyes directly. Apparently, real love looks like 18-karat diamonds. Rebecca shook her head in disgust. I'm sorry, Evelyn, but that's not the Maya I thought I knew. That's someone who's lost all sense of perspective and values. I'm afraid you're right, I agreed sadly. I keep hoping she'll remember what's truly important, but each interaction suggests she's moving further away from the young woman she used to be. By the end of the week, the story had spread throughout Westchester's social elite. Each telling remained factually accurate. I had given Maya a meaningful, valuable gift, and she had publicly rejected it while expressing preference for her mother-in-law's expensive jewelry. But the repetition and discussion amplified the story's impact. At the charity auction on Friday night, I found myself surrounded by sympathetic friends and acquaintances. The consensus was clear. Maya had behaved abhorrently, and my grace under pressure had only highlighted the contrast between my dignity and her selfishness. I don't understand how she could treat you that way, said Dr. Jennifer Walsh, one of the county's most respected physicians. You've always been nothing but supportive of her. Some people lose sight of what matters when they gain access to wealth, replied Thomas Chen, Victoria's husband and a prominent banker. Maya seems to have confused price with value. The irony, added Judge Harold Winters, is that a first edition Rilke is probably worth more than most jewelry. A thoughtful person would have recognized the significance of such a gift. I smiled sadly. I learned long ago that you can't force someone to appreciate meaning if they're only interested in appearance. What none of them knew, what Maya certainly didn't know, was that the book they were discussing with such sympathy had contained a gift worth more than all the jewelry at the party combined. Maya had literally thrown away $10 million in her pursuit of diamonds and social status. And by the time she learned the truth, it would be eternally, irrevocably too late. Within 2 weeks of the birthday party, Maya began to notice that something had shifted in her social world. It started subtly. Invitations that took longer to arrive, conversations that grew shorter when she approached, smiles that seemed slightly forced. At first, she attributed it to her imagination. The Williams family's social circle was notoriously competitive and exclusive. Perhaps she was simply being more sensitive to dynamics that had always existed. But by the 3rd week, the pattern was unmistakable. Did you get an invitation to the Hendersons' anniversary party? Maya asked Prince Will over breakfast in their spacious kitchen. She was scrolling through her phone, checking social media posts from an event she clearly hadn't been invited to. Prince Will looked up from his newspaper with annoyance. What anniversary party? Their 30th. Look. She held up her phone, showing him Instagram photos from what was obviously a major social gathering. The Morettas are there, the Lincolns, the Ashfords, everyone we usually see at these things. Maybe the invitation got lost in the mail, Prince Will suggested dismissively, but Maya could see the concern in his eyes. The Hendersons were important clients of his law firm. Being excluded from their anniversary celebration was more than a social slight. It was potentially damaging to business. And what about the museum fundraiser? Maya continued, her voice rising slightly. I've been on that committee for 2 years, but suddenly they don't need my help with planning? Prince Will set down his newspaper with an expression of growing irritation. What exactly are you suggesting, Maya? That there's some conspiracy against us. I'm suggesting that something is wrong, Maya snapped. People are treating me differently. Conversations stop when I walk into a room. Jennifer Morrison literally crossed the street yesterday to avoid talking to me. You're being paranoid. But privately, Prince Will had noticed the same thing. His golf partners seemed less friendly lately. Business contacts were harder to reach. Two potential clients had chosen other law firms without explanation in the past week. The situation became impossible to ignore when Mrs. Williams called Maya on a Tuesday afternoon, her usually confident voice strained with concern. "Maya, dear, I need to speak with you about something delicate," her mother-in-law began. "I've been hearing some concerning conversations lately." Maya's heart sank. If Mrs. Williams was hearing gossip about her, it meant the entire social hierarchy was talking. "What kind of conversations?" "About your behavior at the birthday party. Specifically, about how you treated your mother." Maya felt a flash of anger. "My mother embarrassed me with that cheap gift. She knew everyone would be watching, and she chose to make me look bad with some secondhand book." "That's not how people are describing it, dear." Mrs. Williams's voice was careful, diplomatic. "They're saying you publicly humiliated a woman who gave you a thoughtful, valuable gift. They're saying you threw the book at her and called her a disgrace." "It was just a book." "It was a first edition Rilke, Maya. That's not just a book. That's a collector's item that shows considerable thought and expense." Maya was quiet for a moment, processing this information. She had been so focused on the contrast between the simple book and the elaborate necklace that she hadn't considered the book's actual value. "Even if it was valuable," she said finally, "she was trying to make me look bad. Everyone else brought normal gifts, and she shows up with some intellectual thing that makes everyone else look shallow." "Or," Mrs. Williams said quietly, "she brought you something meaningful that reflected your previous interests and education. And you rejected it in the cruelest possible way." The criticism from her mother-in-law stung more than Maya expected. Mrs. Williams had always supported her, always made her feel valued and important. To hear disapproval in her voice was deeply unsettling. "What are people saying exactly?" "They're saying you've lost perspective. That you've become someone who values appearance over substance. That you treated your own mother with inexcusable cruelty." Mrs. Williams paused. "And frankly, dear, I'm beginning to understand their point." Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. "Are you taking her side now, too?" "I'm taking the side of basic human decency, Maya. Your mother has always been nothing but kind to you. She's been gracious about our family's wealth, supportive of your marriage, and generous with her time and attention. And you repaid that by publicly humiliating her over a gift that was actually quite thoughtful and appropriate." After Mrs. Williams hung up, Maya sat in her designer kitchen surrounded by luxury, feeling more alone than she had since her father's death. Her husband was annoyed with her, her social circle was avoiding her, and now even her mother-in-law was questioning her behavior. For the first time since the party, she found herself thinking seriously about that book. A first edition Rilke. She tried to remember what she could about rare book values, but her knowledge was limited. Still, if Mrs. Williams was right about it being valuable, then perhaps she had misjudged the situation. But even that realization brought no comfort. The damage was done. She had publicly rejected her mother's gift and criticized her character in front of 50 influential people. Even if the book had been worth more than she realized, her reaction had revealed something ugly about her own character that she wasn't ready to confront. That evening, as she and Prince Will ate dinner in uncomfortable silence, Maya found herself wondering if there was a way to repair the damage she had done. But every scenario she imagined seemed to require admitting that she had been wrong, and that was something her pride wouldn't allow her to consider. She had no idea that the book she was finally beginning to regret rejecting had contained something that would have changed her life forever. And she had no idea that it was already too late to matter. The stress began to manifest physically 3 weeks after the birthday party. Maya woke up one morning with a crushing headache that no amount of medication could touch. By noon, she was nauseated and dizzy, forcing her to cancel lunch plans with her small remaining circle of friends. "It's just stress," Prince Will said dismissively when she mentioned the symptoms. "You're overthinking this whole social situation. It'll blow over." But the headaches didn't stop. They came daily now, sometimes so severe that Maya had to lie in a darkened room with ice packs pressed against her temples. Her sleep became erratic, filled with anxious dreams about standing alone in crowded rooms while people whispered and pointed. The insomnia made everything worse. Dark circles appeared under her eyes despite expensive concealer. Her hands developed a slight tremor that made it difficult to apply makeup or eat without spilling. She lost weight rapidly, her designer clothes hanging loose on her increasingly gaunt frame. "You need to see a doctor," Mrs. Williams said during one of their increasingly rare phone conversations. "You don't sound well, dear." "I'm fine," Maya insisted, though her reflection in the mirror told a different story. "I'm just tired." But she wasn't fine, and she knew it. The social isolation was eating away at her sense of self-worth. The woman who had once been the center of attention at every gathering now found herself making excuses to avoid social events entirely. It was during a particularly bad episode, she had been vomiting for 2 hours and could barely stand, that Maya had her first truly clear moment of recognition about what she had lost. She was lying on the bathroom floor, too weak to move, when she remembered a line from Rilke that she had once loved. "The future enters into us in order to transform us, long before it happens." The memory hit her like a physical blow. She had memorized those poems in college, had carried a worn paperback copy of Rilke everywhere she went. She had quoted him in her graduation speech, had written her senior thesis on his influence on modern poetry. And her mother had remembered. In the midst of all the expensive, flashy gifts, Evelyn had chosen something that connected to who Maya used to be, who she had been before the Williams' money and status had reshaped her priorities. For the first time since the party, Maya allowed herself to truly consider what had happened from her mother's perspective. Evelyn had spent time and thought choosing something meaningful, something that honored Maya's intellectual history and literary interests. And Maya had thrown it back at her while declaring her a disgrace. The realization brought on a panic attack, so severe that Prince Will had to call an ambulance. Maya spent 6 hours in the emergency room having every test imaginable, only to be told that her symptoms were consistent with acute stress and anxiety. "You need to talk to someone," the doctor told her gently. "This level of psychological distress is affecting your physical health in serious ways." "I'm not crazy," Maya protested weakly. "You're not crazy. But you're clearly struggling with something that's impacting your well-being. Have you experienced any major losses or changes recently? Relationship problems? Family conflicts?" Maya almost laughed at the understatement. "You could say that." The doctor prescribed anxiety medication and referred her to a therapist, but Maya knew the real problem couldn't be fixed with pills or counseling sessions. She had destroyed something important, and the guilt was literally making her sick. Lying in the hospital bed, surrounded by the sterile smell of disinfectant and the beeping of machines, Maya found herself thinking about her mother for the first time in years, really thinking about her, not just reacting to her presence or absence. Evelyn had been a devoted mother and wife, the kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthday and always brought thoughtful gifts to dinner parties. She had supported Maya through college, celebrated every achievement, and offered comfort during every disappointment. And how had Maya repaid that love and support? By choosing a mother-in-law who offered diamonds over a mother who offered depth. By valuing surface glamour over genuine affection. By publicly rejecting everything Evelyn represented in favor of everything Mrs. Williams could buy. The irony was devastating. Maya had spent 3 years trying to become worthy of the Williams family fortune, only to realize that she had already possessed something more valuable, a mother who loved her unconditionally and wanted nothing more than to maintain their connection. But it was too late now. The damage was done, the bridge burned. Even if Maya could somehow swallow her pride and apologize, how could she expect forgiveness for such public cruelty? As she lay in that hospital bed, Maya began to understand that she had lost more than her social status in the aftermath of the birthday party. She had lost her sense of who she was, her connection to her own history and values, and most importantly, her relationship with the one person who had loved her before she had anything worth coveting. And for the first time since the party, she began to wonder if that worn book might have contained more than just poetry and memories. The thought was barely formed, just a whisper of intuition, but it lodged in her mind like a splinter. What if there had been something else inside that book? What if her mother's calm acceptance of the rejection hadn't been resignation, but knowledge that Maya was making a terrible mistake? The thought terrified her more than all the physical symptoms combined. The revelation came not through Maya's own investigation, but through the worst possible source, a society columnist for the local newspaper who had attended the birthday party and had been investigating the aftermath for weeks. Cynthia Hartwell was known throughout Westchester County for her sharp wit, impeccable sources, and ability to uncover the most scandalous details of high society drama. Her weekly column was required reading for anyone who wanted to understand the social dynamics of the area's elite. Maya was having coffee with one of her few remaining friends when Jennifer Martinez burst through the cafe door, her face pale with shock. "Maya," Jennifer said, sliding into the booth across from her, "you need to see this." She placed the latest edition of the Westchester County Herald on the table, folded to Cynthia Hartwell's column. The headline made Maya's blood freeze. "The $10 million book, How Greed Blinded a Daughter to Her Mother's Greatest Gift." Maya's hands trembled as she read the article, each word hitting her like a physical blow. This reporter has learned the shocking truth behind the birthday party incident that has been the subject of much discussion in our community's social circles. On the evening of Maya Williams Moore's birthday celebration at the Williams estate, her mother, Evelyn Moore, presented her with what appeared to be a simple gift, a first edition of Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet. Maya's reaction was witnessed by 50 guests, including this reporter. She threw the book back at her mother, called her a disgrace, and declared that her mother-in-law, Mrs. Catherine Williams, was the real one because she understood what real love looked like. What Maya didn't know, what no one at the party knew except Evelyn Moore, was that hidden inside that book was a check for $10 million. According to sources close to the Moore family, the check was intended as a birthday gift that would have given Maya complete financial independence. Instead of discovering this life-changing surprise, Maya rejected both the book and the fortune it contained in favor of her mother-in-law's diamond necklace. The same sources confirm that following the public humiliation at the party, Evelyn Moore immediately contacted her attorney and redirected the $10 million to establish the Evelyn and James Moore Foundation, which will provide scholarships for underprivileged students pursuing careers in education and social work. The funds have been placed in an irrevocable trust, meaning that Maya Williams Moore will never have access to the fortune she unknowingly rejected. As one source close to the family put it, Maya chose diamonds over depth, and it cost her everything. Mrs. Moore declined to comment for this article, maintaining the dignified silence she has shown throughout this ordeal. Mrs. Williams Moore could not be reached for comment. One can only imagine the regret Maya Williams Moore must feel upon learning that her cruel rejection of her mother's cheap thrift store find actually cost her $10 million. As the saying goes, all that glitters is not gold, and sometimes the most valuable gifts come in the simplest packages. The cafe around Maya seemed to spin and blur. She read the article 3 times, each reading making the reality more horrifying and undeniable. $10 million. She had thrown away $10 million. Maya? Jennifer's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Maya, are you okay? You look like you're going to faint." But Maya couldn't respond. She was trapped in a nightmare of her own making, replaying that moment on the terrace when she had hurled the book back at her mother with such contempt and anger. The book had hit her mother's chest with an audible thud. Maya remembered that sound now with crystal clarity. She remembered the way her mother had bent down to pick it up, carefully closing it and brushing off the dust. She remembered the dignity with which Evelyn had walked away, never once losing her composure or trying to defend herself. And now Maya understood why. Evelyn had known exactly what Maya was rejecting. She had watched her daughter choose cruelty over love, materialism over meaning, and in doing so, throw away a fortune that would have changed her life forever. "I have to go," Maya whispered, standing up so quickly that she knocked over her coffee cup. The hot liquid spread across the table and dripped onto the floor, but she didn't notice. She stumbled out of the cafe in a daze, leaving Jennifer to clean up the mess and pay the bill. The world around her seemed unreal, like she was moving through a nightmare where every familiar landmark had been replaced by something threatening and strange. By the time she reached her car, Maya's phone was already ringing. Prince Will's name appeared on the screen, and she could imagine the fury in his voice before she even answered. "What the hell is this article, Maya?" he shouted before she could say hello. $10 million? You threw away $10 million. "I didn't know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You didn't know? How could you not know? Who throws away a book without even looking inside it?" I was angry. I was embarrassed. "I didn't think." "You didn't think." "No, you obviously didn't think. Do you have any idea what this means for us? For my career? For our reputation?" Maya couldn't answer. She was still struggling to process the magnitude of what she had lost. $10 million would have meant freedom from dependence on the Williams family money. It would have meant she could have been generous and philanthropic on her own terms. It would have meant security for any children she might have in the future. Instead, she had nothing. Worse than nothing, she had the knowledge that she had possessed everything and thrown it away in a moment of petty cruelty. "Maya, are you listening to me? I have to call my mother," she said suddenly. "Your mother? Your mother just humiliated us in front of the entire county. She made us look like greedy fools." "She didn't do anything," Maya said, her voice growing stronger. "I did this. I threw away $10 million because I was too shallow and selfish to appreciate what she was trying to give me." "Maya, don't you dare." But Maya had already hung up. She sat in her car in the cafe parking lot, watching people walk by on the sidewalk, all of them probably reading the same article, all of them talking about the woman who had been so greedy and materialistic that she had literally thrown away a fortune. She called her mother's number with shaking fingers, knowing even as she did, so that it was hopeless. The article had said the money was in an irrevocable trust. There was no undoing what had been done. The phone rang 4 times before Evelyn's calm voice answered. "Hello, Maya." "Mom," Maya whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I just read the article. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the check." There was a long pause. When Evelyn spoke again, her voice was gentle but firm. "I know you didn't know, sweetheart. But that's not really the point, is it?" "What do you mean?" "The check was hidden inside a book of poetry that you used to love. You threw both away without a moment's consideration for their value, monetary or otherwise. The $10 million was just paper, Maya. What you really threw away was much more precious than that." Maya sobbed into the phone, unable to form words. "You threw away respect, kindness, and the memory of who you used to be," Evelyn continued. "You chose cruelty over love, appearance over substance. The money is gone now, Maya. It's gone forever, and it's helping students who understand the value of education and service. But the real loss isn't financial, it's spiritual. Can we fix this?" Maya begged. "Can we try again?" But even as she asked the question, she knew what the answer would be. "Some things can't be fixed, Maya," Evelyn said softly. "Some choices have permanent consequences. I hope someday you'll understand that the greatest gift I ever tried to give you wasn't money. It was the example of how to live with integrity and kindness. You rejected that gift long before you rejected the book. The line went dead, and Maya sat alone in her car, crying for everything she had lost and everything she would never have the chance to reclaim. The public revelation of the $10 million check transformed Maya from a subject of local gossip into a national symbol of greed and stupidity. The story was picked up by major news outlets, social media, and even late-night television comedians who used Maya as the punchline for jokes about materialism and ingratitude. Can you believe this woman threw away $10 million because she wanted jewelry instead of books? One comedian said during his monologue. I guess we know who didn't get the memo that knowledge is power. The memes were even worse. Maya's photo from the birthday party, taken moments after she had thrown the book, was paired with captions like, "When you're too greedy to open a gift," and "the face you make when you throw away your inheritance." The images spread across every social media platform, viewed by millions of people who saw her as the embodiment of entitled stupidity. But it was the local reaction that hurt the most. Maya and Prince Will were completely ostracized from Westchester society. Invitations stopped arriving entirely. Their memberships to exclusive clubs were quietly revoked. Even basic social interactions became impossibly awkward as people either stared at them with fascination or avoided them entirely. Prince Will's law practice collapsed within a month. Clients fled in droves, unwilling to be associated with a family that had become synonymous with poor judgment and moral failure. Business partners dissolved their relationships, and his law firm asked him to take an indefinite leave of absence. "This is all your fault," he told Maya one evening as they sat in their mansion, surrounded by expensive possessions that now seemed like hollow mockeries of real value. "My career is over because you were too stupid to look inside a book." "I know," Maya whispered. She had lost 15 pounds since the article came out, her face gaunt and her eyes hollow with stress and regret. "I know it's my fault. Do you have any idea what we've lost? Not just the 10 million, but everything. My reputation, my client base, our social standing. We're pariahs because of your greed." The worst part was that Maya couldn't even defend herself. Every accusation was true. She had been greedy, shallow, and cruel. She had valued appearance over substance, chosen diamonds over depth, and rejected her mother's love in the most public and humiliating way possible. Her health continued to deteriorate rapidly. The panic attacks came daily now, sometimes so severe that she couldn't leave her bedroom. The headaches had evolved into migraines that left her bedridden for days at a time. Her digestive system had essentially stopped functioning, and she could barely keep food down. "You need to be hospitalized," Dr. Patricia Williams told her during a house call. "Your blood pressure is dangerously high, you're severely dehydrated, and your stress levels are literally killing you." "I can't go to a hospital," Maya protested weakly. "The media will find out. They'll take pictures." "Maya, you could have a stroke. You could die. This level of psychological trauma is having serious physical consequences that medication alone can't address." But Maya refused treatment, too ashamed to face the world outside her increasingly isolated existence. She spent her days lying in bed, replaying that moment on the terrace over and over again, torturing herself with the knowledge of what she had lost. Mrs. Williams, who had once treated Maya like a beloved daughter, now spoke to her only when necessary and with obvious disappointment. "I'm ashamed to call you family," she told Maya during one of their final conversations. "Your mother showed you nothing but love and generosity for 28 years, and you repaid her with public cruelty. That $10 million would have been enough to ensure your children's future, your grandchildren's future. Instead, it's helping strangers because you were too selfish to appreciate what you had." The marriage to Prince Will became a daily war zone of recrimination and blame. He slept in the guest room and spoke to her only to remind her of everything they had lost because of her actions. "My mother was right about you from the beginning," he said one particularly cruel evening. She said you were too common, too ordinary to really understand our world. I should have listened to her. Maya didn't even have the energy to respond anymore. She lay in their king-sized bed, surrounded by luxury that now felt like a prison, and thought about her mother living peacefully in her modest apartment, probably feeling nothing but relief at being free from a daughter who had caused her so much pain. The irony was devastating. Maya had spent 3 years trying to prove herself worthy of the Williams family fortune, only to discover that she had already possessed something far more valuable, her mother's unconditional love and a $10 million inheritance that could have given her independence and security forever. Now she had neither. The Williams family barely tolerated her presence, her marriage was crumbling, her health was failing, and her mother wanted nothing to do with her. She was truly, completely alone with the consequences of her choice. As Maya's physical and mental health continued to deteriorate, she began to experience what could only be described as a spiritual crisis. The rational part of her mind understood that her suffering was the direct result of her own actions, but another part of her, the part that was desperate for any explanation that might offer hope for redemption, began to believe that she was being punished by forces beyond her control. It started with dreams. Every night, Maya found herself standing on the terrace at the Williams estate, holding the leather-bound book while 50 faces stared at her in judgment. In the dreams, she would open the book and see the check, but when she tried to apologize or explain, no sound would come from her mouth. She would wake up gasping, her nightgown soaked with sweat, the taste of regret bitter in her mouth. During her waking hours, she became obsessed with signs and omens. When she dropped a glass and it shattered, she saw it as punishment for breaking her relationship with her mother. When thunderstorms rolled through Westchester, she interpreted the lightning as divine anger at her behavior. Even ordinary events, a bird flying into a window, a power outage, a traffic jam, became evidence of cosmic displeasure with her choices. "I think I'm being punished," she told Dr. Jennifer Walsh during one of her increasingly frequent medical consultations. "Everything goes wrong now. Everything." Dr. Walsh studied her patient with growing concern. Maya had lost nearly 30 pounds in 2 months, her hair was falling out in clumps, and her blood work showed signs of severe nutritional deficiency and chronic stress. "Maya, you're punishing yourself," Dr. Walsh said gently. "Your body is responding to the psychological trauma of regret and shame. This isn't supernatural, it's medical." "But everything I touch turns to dust," Maya insisted. "My marriage is falling apart, Prince Will's career is ruined, even Mrs. Williams won't speak to me anymore. It's like I'm cursed." "You're not cursed. You're experiencing the natural consequences of a choice that had far-reaching implications. The stress of that realization is affecting every aspect of your life." But Maya couldn't accept such a simple explanation. The magnitude of what she had lost seemed to require a correspondingly dramatic cause. She began reading about karma, divine justice, and spiritual retribution, searching for frameworks that might help her understand why fate had allowed her to make such a catastrophic mistake. She visited 3 different psychics, all of whom told her variations of the same thing. She had accumulated negative energy through her treatment of her mother, and this energy would continue to attract misfortune until she found a way to make amends. "The universe doesn't forgive ingratitude," one of them told her solemnly. "You rejected a gift of love, and now love is rejecting you." Maya threw money at spiritual advisors, alternative healers, and anyone who claimed to be able to lift curses or redirect negative energy. She bought crystals, burned sage, and meditated for hours, desperate to find some way to undo the cosmic damage she believed she had caused. But nothing worked. If anything, her condition grew worse. The migraines became so severe that she couldn't tolerate light or sound. The panic attacks left her paralyzed with fear for hours at a time. Her digestive system shut down almost entirely, forcing her to survive on liquid nutrition supplements. Prince Will, watching his wife's complete psychological collapse, began to fear for his own sanity. "You're scaring me, Maya," he told her one evening as she rocked back and forth in their bedroom, clutching a handful of supposedly protective crystals. "You need real help, not this, whatever this is." "I need to make it right," Maya whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. "I need to fix what I broke." "You can't fix it. The money is gone. Your mother won't speak to you, and you're making yourself sick with guilt. You need to accept what happened and try to move forward." But Maya couldn't move forward. She was trapped in an endless cycle of regret and self-recrimination, convinced that she was being punished for her cruelty and that only perfect contrition could save her. She began writing letters to her mother, dozens of them, each one longer and more desperate than the last. She poured out her remorse, her understanding of what she had lost, her willingness to do anything to earn forgiveness. But she never sent any of them, knowing instinctively that her mother would see them as manipulation rather than genuine repentance. The turning point came when Maya collapsed during one of her meditation sessions and was rushed to the emergency room unconscious. The doctors found that her blood pressure had spiked to dangerous levels, her heart was showing signs of stress-induced damage, and her body was beginning to shut down from the constant flood of stress hormones. Mrs. Williams-Moore, the emergency room physician, told Prince Will, "Your wife is experiencing what we call broken heart syndrome. It's a real medical condition where extreme emotional stress causes the heart muscle to temporarily weaken. If she doesn't find a way to manage her psychological state, she could suffer permanent cardiac damage or even death." Lying in the hospital bed with monitors beeping around her, Maya finally understood that her spiritual reckoning had become a medical emergency. The punishment she thought she was receiving from the universe was actually punishment she was inflicting on herself through the sheer force of her guilt and regret. But even that realization brought no peace. Because the truth remained unchanged, she had thrown away $10 million and her mother's love, and no amount of spiritual seeking or medical intervention could undo those losses. She was trapped in a hell of her own making, and she was beginning to understand that there might be no way out. Maya's complete physical and psychological breakdown finally forced her to attempt the one thing she had been avoiding, a direct, in-person confrontation with her mother. After 3 months of deteriorating health, failed spiritual seeking, and increasing isolation, she convinced herself that a face-to-face meeting might be her only chance at redemption. She prepared for weeks, planning every word she would say, every gesture she would make. She practiced her apology in front of mirrors, wrote and rewrote speeches, and even rehearsed falling to her knees if necessary. In her desperate state, she believed that sufficient humiliation and contrition might somehow undo the irrevocable trust that had claimed her inheritance. The day she chose was a gray October afternoon, 3 months after the newspaper article had destroyed her life. Maya hadn't eaten in 2 days, partly from stress and partly from a misguided belief that her physical suffering might demonstrate the sincerity of her remorse. She had lost nearly 40 pounds since the birthday party, her designer clothes hanging on her skeletal frame like expensive shrouds. Prince Will had tried to stop her from making the visit, partly out of concern for her fragile health and partly out of his own wounded pride. "She humiliated us publicly," he argued as Maya prepared to leave their empty mansion. "She could have handled this privately, but she chose to make us look like fools in front of the entire county. Why should you go crawling to her now?" "Because I was wrong," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. "Because I threw away everything that mattered for a piece of jewelry that means nothing. The money is gone, Maya. Gone forever. Groveling isn't going to bring it back." But Maya was beyond rational consideration of outcomes. She was operating purely on desperate hope, clinging to the possibility that her mother's love might somehow prove stronger than the legal documents that had redirected her inheritance. She drove to her mother's apartment complex with shaking hands, her heart racing so fast that she worried about having another cardiac episode before she could deliver her plea. The building was modest but well-maintained, a stark contrast to the Williams estate where Maya had grown accustomed to living. Evelyn answered the door after Maya's third knock, and the sight of her daughter clearly shocked her. Maya had become a ghost of herself, pale, emaciated, with hollow eyes and trembling hands. Her expensive clothes couldn't hide the obvious signs of severe physical and emotional distress. "Maya," Evelyn said quietly, stepping back to allow her daughter into the small but comfortable apartment. "You look terrible. Are you ill?" "I'm dying," Maya said dramatically, though she meant it metaphorically rather than literally. "I'm dying from what I did to you, to us, to everything." Evelyn guided Maya to the living room sofa, studying her daughter's condition with the practiced eye of someone who had spent months watching Maya's decline through mutual acquaintances and social media coverage. "Sit down," Evelyn said gently. "Your skin and bones. When did you last eat?" "I can't eat," Maya said, tears already streaming down her face. "I can't sleep. I can't think about anything except what I threw away." "Mom, I need you to understand. I didn't know about the check. I swear on Dad's grave, I didn't know there was money in that book." Evelyn settled into the chair across from her daughter, her expression calm but guarded. "I know you didn't know, Maya. But as I told you on the phone, that's not really the point." "Then what is the point?" Maya asked desperately. "What do I have to do to fix this? What do I have to say to make you forgive me?" "Maya, the money is gone. It's been legally transferred to a scholarship foundation that will help hundreds of students over the coming decades. There's no one doing that decision." "But you could start a new fund," Maya said quickly, leaning forward with desperate intensity. "You still have money. You could give me another chance to prove that I've learned from this, that I understand now what really matters." Evelyn was quiet for a long moment, studying her daughter's face. Maya could see the pain in her mother's eyes, but also something harder, a resolution that hadn't been there before. "Tell me what you've learned, Maya," Evelyn said finally. "I've learned that I was selfish and greedy and horrible to you," Maya said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I've learned that I let the Williams family money change me into someone I don't recognize. I've learned that I chose superficial things over meaningful relationships, and that I hurt the one person who loved me most in the world. And I'm sorry. I'm so desperately, completely sorry that I would do anything, to take back that moment and make a different choice." Evelyn nodded slowly. "I believe you're sorry, Maya. I can see the pain you're in, and I know it's real." Maya felt a surge of hope. "Then you'll forgive me? You'll help me fix this?" "Maya," Evelyn said gently but firmly, "being sorry isn't the same as being forgiven. And forgiveness doesn't mean erasing consequences." "What do you mean?" "I mean that you showed me exactly who you are when your character was tested. You chose cruelty over kindness, materialism over meaning, and public humiliation over private grace. Those choices revealed something fundamental about your values and priorities." Maya felt the world tilting beneath her. "But people can change. I can change. Perhaps. But the time for change was before you threw that book at me, not after you discovered what it contained. You're not sorry for hurting me, Maya. You're sorry for the consequences of hurting me. There's a difference." "That's not true," Maya protested weakly, but even as she said it, she wondered if her mother was right. If that book had contained nothing but poetry, would you be here now? Would you have spent the last 3 months torturing yourself with regret? Or would you have continued believing that I was a disgrace who didn't understand real love? Maya couldn't answer, because she knew the truth. If the book had contained only Rilke's poems, she would have forgotten about the incident within a week. Her remorse was tied directly to her financial loss, not to her moral failure. The $10 million was a test, Maya, Evelyn continued. It was a test of whether you could appreciate a meaningful gift even when it came in humble packaging. It was a test of whether you could treat your mother with basic respect and kindness even in front of people whose opinions you valued more than mine. You failed that test completely. Give me another test, Maya begged. Give me a chance to prove that I've learned from this. There won't be another test, sweetheart. Some opportunities only come once in a lifetime, and you chose to throw yours away in the most public and cruel manner possible. Maya slid off the sofa and onto her knees, grasping her mother's hands with desperate strength. Please, Mom. Please. I'll do anything. I'll give up the Williams money. I'll divorce Prince Will. I'll dedicate my life to charity work. Just please don't give up on me. Evelyn gently extracted her hands from Maya's grip, her expression sad but unwavering. I'm not giving up on you, Maya. I'm protecting myself from further abuse. There's a difference. I would never hurt you again. I swear on everything I hold sacred. You held nothing sacred when you called me a disgrace in front of 50 people, Evelyn replied quietly. You held nothing sacred when you threw my gift back at me like garbage. Why should I believe that's changed? Maya had no answer. She knelt on her mother's living room floor, sobbing with the kind of desperate grief that comes from recognizing irreversible loss. The foundation will do wonderful things with that money, Evelyn said softly. Students who truly understand the value of education will get opportunities they never could have imagined. Young people who want to dedicate their lives to serving others will be able to pursue their dreams. That money will create a legacy of knowledge and service instead of enabling someone who has already proven she doesn't appreciate what she's given. But I'm your daughter, Maya whispered through her tears. Yes, you are. And that's why this hurts so much. But being my daughter doesn't exempt you from the consequences of your choices. If anything, it makes those consequences more necessary. Maya stayed on her knees for another 10 minutes, crying and pleading, but Evelyn's position never wavered. Finally, exhausted and defeated, Maya pulled herself back onto the sofa. What happens now? She asked, her voice broken. Now you go home and figure out how to live with the choice you made, Evelyn replied. You figure out how to build a life worth living despite the money you lost and the relationships you damaged. You learn that happiness doesn't come from other people's approval or financial security. It comes from living according to your values and treating people with kindness and respect. Will I ever see you again? Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, Maya. That depends on whether you can find a way to become someone I'd want to have a relationship with. Maya left her mother's apartment that day knowing that she had lost more than $10 million. She had lost the love and respect of the one person who had truly known her, and she was beginning to understand that some losses are permanent, no matter how deeply they're regretted. 5 years have passed since that gray October afternoon when Maya knelt on her mother's living room floor, begging for forgiveness that would never come. The world has moved on from the scandal of the $10 million book, though Maya's story is still occasionally referenced in articles about entitlement and ingratitude. Maya herself survived her breakdown, though she bears permanent scars from the experience. Her marriage to Prince Will ended in a bitter divorce 2 years after the birthday party incident. He remarried within 6 months, choosing a woman from an established family who understood the social requirements of his position. Maya was left with a modest settlement and the crushing weight of knowing that her choices had destroyed not just her inheritance, but her entire life trajectory. She lives now in a small apartment in a middle-class neighborhood, working as a freelance editor for academic journals, a job that pays little but allows her to work with the kind of literary content she once loved. Her health never fully recovered from the stress-induced damage of those terrible months. She suffers from chronic migraines, digestive issues, and anxiety that requires daily medication to manage. The social isolation was perhaps the hardest consequence to bear. Maya found herself completely cut off from the world she had inhabited as Mrs. Princewell Williams. Former friends crossed the street to avoid her, and invitations to social events stopped coming entirely. She was toxic by association, a reminder of how quickly status and security could be lost through poor judgment. But it was the estrangement from her mother that caused the deepest and most lasting pain. Evelyn never contacted Maya after that final meeting, never responded to the birthday cards Maya sent each year, never acknowledged the occasional letters of apology and update that Maya continued to write despite knowing they were unwelcome. Maya learned about her mother's life through newspaper articles and social media posts about the Evelyn and James Moore Foundation. The scholarship program had flourished beyond anyone's expectations, helping over 300 students pursue careers in education, social work, and public service. Each semester, the foundation held award ceremonies where recipients shared their stories of overcoming adversity to pursue meaningful careers. Maya attended one of these ceremonies, sitting in the back row and watching her mother present scholarships to young people whose gratitude and determination stood in stark contrast to Maya's own entitled behavior at that birthday party 5 years earlier. Evelyn looked peaceful and fulfilled, surrounded by foundation board members, scholarship recipients, and community leaders who clearly respected and admired her work. She had grown her silver hair long and wore simple but elegant clothes that suggested someone comfortable with herself and her choices. During her remarks to the scholarship recipients, Evelyn said something that hit Maya like a physical blow. The greatest gift we can give young people is not money, but the understanding that education and service to others are the foundations of a meaningful life. These scholarships represent not just financial assistance, but an investment in the kind of character and values that make our world a better place. Maya left the ceremony before the reception, knowing that her presence would only cause pain and embarrassment for everyone involved. But she carried her mother's words with her, finally understanding the lesson she had been too shallow and self-centered to learn 5 years earlier. The $10 million hadn't been just a birthday gift. It had been a test of character, a final opportunity for Maya to demonstrate that she valued substance over appearance, meaning over materialism. She had failed that test spectacularly, and her failure had revealed something fundamental about who she was at her core. In the years since, Maya had tried to change, to become someone worthy of the gift she had rejected. She volunteered at a literacy center, teaching adults to read. She donated what little money she could spare to educational charities. She lived simply and tried to find meaning in small acts of service rather than grand gestures of wealth. But she knew it was too late. The money was gone forever, helping people who understood its value in ways Maya never had. More importantly, her mother's love and respect were gone too, casualties of a moment of cruelty that could never be undone. Sometimes, late at night in her small apartment, Maya would take out her old college copy of Rilke's poetry and read the words she had once memorized. Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act, just once, with beauty and courage. She had been given a chance to act with beauty and courage, to choose love over materialism, to honor her mother's gift with grace and gratitude. Instead, she had chosen cruelty and public humiliation, revealing herself to be not a princess but a dragon, consumed by greed and status anxiety. The irony was profound. Maya had spent her marriage trying to prove herself worthy of the Williams family fortune, only to discover that she had already possessed something far more valuable, her mother's unconditional love and a $10 million inheritance that could have given her true independence. Now she had neither. She was alone with her regrets and her increasingly fragile health, working to support herself for the first time in her adult life, living with the knowledge that she had possessed everything and thrown it away in a moment of spectacular selfishness. Meanwhile, Evelyn Moore continued to thrive. The foundation grew stronger each year, its impact expanding to serve students across multiple states. Evelyn served on the boards of 3 other charitable organizations and was frequently recognized for her philanthropic leadership. She had built a life of purpose and meaning, surrounded by people who shared her values and appreciated her generosity. The contrast between mother and daughter could not have been starker. Evelyn had taken the pain of her daughter's rejection and transformed it into something beautiful, a legacy that would impact thousands of lives for generations to come. Maya had taken her inheritance and destroyed it through her own cruelty, leaving herself with nothing but regret and the bitter knowledge of what might have been. As Maya sat in her small apartment on the 5th anniversary of that terrible birthday party, she finally understood the full magnitude of what she had lost. It hadn't been just money. It had been the chance to be part of something larger than herself, to carry forward her parents' values of education and service, to build a life worthy of the love that had been offered to her so freely for 28 years. She had chosen diamonds over depth, cruelty over kindness, and in doing so, had forfeited not just her inheritance, but her place in her mother's life. The scholarship recipients who benefited from the Evelyn and James Moore Foundation would never know that their opportunities had come at the cost of a daughter's relationship with her mother, but Maya would carry that knowledge for the rest of her life. The leather-bound book of Rilke's poetry still sat on her nightstand, a daily reminder of the moment when everything changed. She had bought a copy identical to the one she had thrown at her mother, though it contained no hidden treasures, only words about love, loss, and the courage required to live an authentic life. Sometimes she would read Rilke's letters to the young poet and imagine what her life might have been like if she had opened that gift with gratitude instead of contempt. She might have discovered the check and been moved to tears by her mother's generosity. She might have used the money to start her own foundation or to pursue meaningful work. She might have built a relationship with her mother based on mutual respect and shared values instead of destroying it through public cruelty. But these were fantasies now, as impossible to reclaim as the $10 million that continued to change lives through the foundation that bore her parents' names. Maya had made her choice in full view of 50 witnesses, and that choice had revealed something about her character that couldn't be undone by regret or apology. Evelyn Moore had built a legacy of love, education, and service. Her name was spoken with reverence by students whose lives had been transformed by her generosity, by educators who had been empowered to pursue their callings, by social workers who were making their communities better places to live. Maya Williams Moore was remembered only as a cautionary tale about greed and ingratitude, a woman who had literally thrown away a fortune because she was too shallow to appreciate the value of a thoughtful gift. The difference between those legacies was the difference between a life lived with purpose and meaning and a life consumed by materialism and status anxiety. Maya understood that now, but understanding came too late to change anything. She would spend the rest of her days knowing that she had possessed everything that mattered and had thrown it away in a moment of spectacular cruelty. And perhaps that knowledge, painful as it was the only education she was capable of receiving. The book had taught her its lesson after all, though not in the way her mother had intended. It had shown her the difference between wisdom and foolishness, between love and greed, between the person she might have been and the person she had chosen to become. And that lesson, unlike the money, would last forever. And that, my friends, is the power of choice and consequence, of a mother's love transformed into something greater than revenge, into justice and legacy. Evelyn's journey reminds us that even when betrayal cuts deepest, we can choose to transform our pain into purpose, to build something beautiful from the ashes of disappointment. Maya's story shows us that some opportunities come only once in a lifetime, and the choices we make in our moments of testing reveal who we truly are. If this story resonated with you, if you believe in the power of living according to your values, even when it costs you everything, then hit that subscribe button, join the Her True Stories family, and let's continue to share these incredible tales of strength, consequence, and the enduring power of love transformed into legacy. Until next time, stay true to your values, appreciate the gifts you're given, and remember, some treasures can only be recognized by those wise enough to look beyond the surface.